Backpacks, tents, and sleeping bags. That's what most people want to talk about, but almost all that gear is very highly specialized. Your tent and your sleeping bag are good for sleeping in and not much else. Your backpack will carry everything, but beyond that, there's not much use for it. Now, all these things are important. We wouldn't be able to go hiking without them, but what I want to know is, what is backpacking's most useful gear? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Backpacking's top 5 most useful pieces of gear. The piece of gear that most people probably think of when talking about useful gear is trekking poles. And that's because we're used to using trekking poles for hiking and crossing streams and testing snow depth and things like that. But then we're also used to trekking pole tents. It's pretty standard to use your poles to hike during the day and then to hold up your tent at night, which is pretty useful. But what you may not have realized is that trekking poles can also be used for a lot of other things, like a splint if you accidentally break a limb in an emergency. They can be used to scare off animals, either by making you look bigger to a mountain lion when you wave them over your head, or by banging them together to scare off a bear. Or you can even use them to signal for help in an emergency, all of which make trekking poles one of backpacking's most useful pieces of gear. Socks. Socks not only cushion your feet, but they will also wick away sweat, and they keep your toes warm in colder weather. An extra pair of socks can serve as mittens on a cold night, then keep cell phone and camera batteries warm, and they can even protect a water filter you're worried about freezing. And if you use a quilt with a drawstring foot box, you can even use a sock to shove in that little hole to prevent drafts on a cold night. Socks do way more than just protect your feet. They're one of backpacking's most useful pieces of gear. One inexpensive but very useful piece of backpacking gear is not toilet paper, but ziploc bags. I use ziploc bags for everything. Ziploc bags are good for storing gear, for storing food, for organizing gear, for keeping gear dry. You can put trash in ziploc bags that you got to hike out later. If you've got something liquid that you don't want to leak on all your other stuff, like sunscreen or bug spray, you can put that in a ziploc bag. If you've got wet clothes or gear that you don't want to get other things wet in your pack, you can put that in a ziploc bag, and then you can put it back in your pack to keep everything dry. You can even use Ziploc bags to cook freeze-dried meals by simply adding boiling water. Ziploc bags are extremely useful, and this is just the stuff that I could think of. Now, one complaint that people have is that they're disposable and they're bad for the environment, and I totally get that, but Ziploc bags actually hold up really well. If you use freezer bags, you can reuse these bags for years, like I've done with this one. As long as you take really good care of your Ziploc bags, you can use them over and over again, and they're one of backpacking's most useful pieces of gear. One piece of gear that you might not even consider backpacking gear, but is actually very useful on the trail, is your smartphone. Think about it. We use our smartphones as a camera, as a GPS unit, as a music player, as a movie player. You can connect your cell phone to a GPS device like Zoleo, and you can communicate even when you're outside a cell phone service. The only downside to a smartphone is that the batteries don't last very long. But if you combine it with a battery pack, not only can you charge your phone, but you can charge your camera, you can charge your headlamp, a battery pump. Cell phones and battery packs have so much use while on the trail. What are some things that you use your cell phone for that I'm simply not thinking of? Now, probably the most useful piece of gear that I could think of is a plain bandana. Think about it, a bandana can be used as a towel, as a water pre-filter, as neck protection, as a pot cleaner, as a pot holder, as a tent dryer, as a nose tissue, a washcloth. You can use it to mark a hard to find section on the trail for another hiker that might be lagging behind. You can collect wild edibles in it, or you can tie it like a blindfold to use it as a sleep mask when it's bright outside. You can use it as a tourniquet in an emergency, and if you don't want to use it for anything else ever again, the last thing you can use it for is as emergency toilet paper. All of which makes a bandana quite possibly the most useful piece of backpacking gear. What else do you use a bandana for? Or are there other pieces of gear that could go on this list that I'm simply not thinking of? Drop me a comment or check out what others have to say. Also, if you want to support me and the videos that I'm putting out, the easiest way is to simply like and subscribe, or pick up one of my Take a Seat shirts at the link below this video. Make sure that you're following me on Instagram at My Life Outdoors, and as always, thanks for watching.